A classified U.S. intelligence report concludes China is concealing the true extent of the COVID-19 outbreak in its country. Bloomberg News is reporting the communist government is intentionally understating the number of cases as the deaths from the virus. China's early reporting of COVID-19 influenced the global response, and as a result, many countries expected the outbreak to be less threatening than it actually is. Gary Lane explores this question and what needs to be done now to hold China accountable for the global pandemic, with China expert Robert Spalding.
One of the ways that we can hold them to account is really requiring them to conduct a full investigation where our CDC investigators are actually allowed into the lab, allowed there in Wuhan, the P4 lab, allowed to interview their researchers, allowed to go to the wet market that this virus was, according to them, supposed to have come from. But more importantly, we can actually respond by beginning to decouple from the Chinese Communist Party. It's clear it's not just a danger to our economy, as we've lost so many thousands of factories, but it's also a danger to our health and welfare of our citizens. There is no way that we'd have a global pandemic today if the Chinese Communist Party wasn't a totalitarian regime bent on protecting its own image at all costs.
And of course, as you say, it isn't only the deaths from COVID-19, it's the economic livelihood of nations. And you have a doctorate in economics, so tell us, who's been hurt more economically from this pandemic? China, the U.S., other countries?
Well, I think across the world, all countries will be hurt from the pandemic eventually. And I think the Chinese Communist Party's really experienced it first, so they're the first to get their factories back up and operating. In fact, they're using this as justification for a global push to increase their control over the global supply chain. So while everybody else is dealing with the virus, they're busy at work trying to convince everybody that we need to move more of our manufacturing over there. They also went to the Indians recently and said, hey, let us put up a 5G network so we have access to your population, because we use it to track the spread of fevers within China. So it's a good idea if we install this for you. This is what's going on right now. So if you think about it, this was written about in the book Unrestricted Warfare by two PLA colonels. How you take advantage of a crisis by actually advancing your economic and overall power by taking advantage of the countries that are facing the crisis. This is what's going on now.
People wonder about the origins of this virus, and Senator Tom Cotton speculates it may have leaked from a level 4 super lab in Wuhan. We've seen two explanations from China, one that it came from diseased bats in a wet market in Wuhan, another that the U.S. military was responsible for unleashing it on China as a bioweapon. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I have a personal opinion on the origin of the virus, but I don't have any facts. And here's the challenge that we face. Nobody's going to have facts. Everybody that speculates that the virus came from the wet market is doing that based on conjecture. They don't actually have the evidence. Anybody that speculates it's coming from a lab, they're also doing that based on conjecture because they don't have the evidence. My guess is we'll never have the evidence because that's the nature of a totalitarian regime. There's a lot of things that we learned about the Soviet Union after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the crumbling of the former Soviet states. But we're not going to find out what actually happened with this virus until the Chinese Communist Party is no more. And who knows when that'll happen. So in the meantime, we need to protect ourselves because we can't trust. We know for a fact that they're doing biowarfare research. That is probably dangerous when we have such connectivity, particularly with airlines coming back and forth every single day with Chinese passengers. And we found out during the pandemic, if only 3 weeks earlier we had been warned, we'd have 95% less infections right now. This is a challenge of being connected to them.
Okay, and now the other challenge, that FBI DOJ report, it seems like Chinese biologists are covertly bringing in all kinds of biological agents into the U.S. Most of these have legitimate research purposes. Now, you served as Senior Director of Strategic Planning at the National Security Council. So what is your assessment? How great is the security risk to the people of the United States?
Well, they're shipping all kinds of illicit things in the United States. I mean, we already know that they ship in, things that poison our pets or exploding toys. We also know they ship in fentanyl. Now we're finding out they're moving biological viruses across the border, not just from China to here, but from here to China. So these are all challenges of dealing with this regime that really it doesn't believe in rules. In fact, Unrestricted Warfare, the book I was talking about, when you translate it another way, it's called War Without Rules. It's really about how the Chinese Communist Party does not feel it has to obey any of the rules of the international order or even of the United States, because it feels it's entitled to create its own set of rules based on the order it wants. That's what's going on.